Hi, my name's Dave Node, based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I fell in love with technical theater in high school, and that led into mixing live sound at theme parks and doing lights and media at the time, which was 35mm slides. I also got to work on concerts for bands like Chicago and the B-52s. I started my first sound and lighting company back in 1986. Over the past decade and a half, I've had the privilege to work for mostly Fortune 100 end clients. I got to travel all over North America and Canada and Mexico and the Caribbean and even Hawaii. I find myself doing main screen switch, camera switch, running media servers, doing projection, all sorts of V1 positions. With a bachelor's degree in technical theater design, APS and ACE certification, Christie projection and switching certifications, and recently Barco Level 2 certifications, I get to design and execute some really challenging and fun projects now. During the pandemic, I dove into the social media side of our industry. I've written articles on virtual solutions and facilitated owner sessions for Avixa. During one of my weekly Zoom panels and cocktail parties, I was reintroduced to Omar, who turned me on to AV Educate. It's been a pleasure to participate in the AV Educate Facebook page and to share my experience on the AV Tech Talks panel. I love supporting my industry colleagues with education and mentorship during these challenging times. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey everyone, my name is Disa Cameron. I'm from Ottawa in Canada. I'm an account manager with a company we are fondly calling ourselves One Canada, which is comprised of FMAV, PSAV, and Encore, so the group of companies. I've been with the company since about 2005. I started out as a freelance technician, and then I kind of moved my way up the ladder. And now I'm an account manager, which is consisting mostly of sales, but I do a little bit of the operations side and a lot of hand holding with my clients and really helping them make this transition to virtual and to hybrid. The reason why I am excited to be on this panel tonight and spending time with you is I really feel like there's a huge shift going on in our industry right now. And I think it's really important that we all come together, whether we're competitors or not, from different countries or not. I think it's really important that we all come together, collaborate, share our knowledge, and really try and unify and bring this industry back to where it was at and be even stronger and be even better. So thank you so much. Look forward to tonight's show, and thank you.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of AV Educate's AV Tech Talks. I want to thank you for being here so much with us on the AV Tech Talks panel and on Facebook and everywhere else that you're watching us. So let's go into some of these house rules. We go live to Facebook every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get notifications by when we go live by following the AV Educate page on Facebook, and while you're at it, join the AV Educate group. We'll drop the link in the comments. If you want to join the Zoom room by texting 407-504-7690. Again, that number is 407-504-7690. This number is only used for our panelists, and you won't receive any spam text from this number, but you will receive weekly invites to the Zoom room. We're opening the rooms at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we close the doors at 6:55. But keep in mind, panelists have to participate and have to keep their cameras on during the talk. Moving forward, due to the nature of streaming, there's a bit of a delay between when we say in our Zoom room and when it hits Facebook. So when making comments or asking questions, please provide some context. The user interface becomes more sleek, and this will lead to more meaningful engagement. Now, be the sharpshooter in the room. No questions are too basic. AV Educate's mission is to help through knowledge. people move from stagehand to technician. Chances are that others have the same questions you do, so please ask away. At the same time, we welcome comments and input on the topic at hand, so don't hold back that great topic or that correction when one of us says something inaccurate. Now, we don't know everything. We are human. We don't claim to know everything. We may discuss or show the way we do something, and that doesn't mean it's the only way, but it's the way we found that works for one of us. If you have another way that's easier or yields better results, please share that with everybody. The whole session is a live Q&A. Our questions will be discussed, the topics for about an hour, and then we'll move to more about a round table discussion. There's no formal Q&A section. Again, the whole session is a live Q&A, so don't wait until the end to ask your questions or to make your comments. And finally, a shameless plug. Please follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram so we can grow bigger and collaborate with even more amazing people just like you. That's all I got, guys. Back to the main room, back to Zoom, and back to you all in Facebook land. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching.
Hey, Tech Talks, thanks for joining us. Today's November 23rd, episode 21. We've got Jef Kethley back to do a talk on remote production in the cloud. I guess from the panel, is anybody besides Jef doing any kind of cloud production or even remote production where you're just bringing stuff in? Doug Ferguson, what's your experience with that?
I help Jef do his thing. I'm one of his worker bees behind the scenes. We just did a big event with the IAB crew where I was running one of 4 vMix machines. And it was all in the cloud thanks to Jef.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Is anybody else working on?
So basically, you're minion to his GRU, right?
Absolutely.
I think Joe DeMax, you do a bit of cloud stuff every once in a while, maybe.
I've spent the past month of my life doing nothing else, and it's been amazing. And I can't wait to hear more about it from Jef.
Great. Leland, what's your cloud experience like?
Now for the dark side. My first live experience was with Jef and Doug as a team when we did IAB 2020. And my setup we lost comms and things got ugly on my part. But when my section did come to queue, the segment went fine. I learned a big lesson. We all learned a big lesson, I think, over that event. I was on day 3 only, so I didn't get to see all the other guests that appeared. But looked like it was very well constructed, Jef. So thanks for even having me on board for that. I can only ask and hope that I'm ever brought back on these productions again.
Oh, you will be. Don't worry.
It's fun stuff. I really enjoy it because it gives you so much more flexibility than you could possibly do in a physical studio.
Great, cool. Well, thank you guys for that input in the beginning. We'll take questions and comments. I'm glad that we have some people who are going to be able to contribute tonight. If you have questions out on Facebook or on the Zoom side, please get those in. Use the comment section on the live on Facebook, and please use the Q&A for questions on the Zoom side. Omar, you got anything, or Chris, before we just kick it to Jef?
I do not. I'd rather kick it to Jef right now. I'm monitoring Facebook land. We're getting lots of comments and feedbacks. A lot of people are saying hi to Jef. We got somebody in Sweden right now. Thank you for being here. I think we had someone else in, was it St. Cloud? Let me verify real fast. St. Martin as well. So thank you for being here from St. Martin. Thank you for being here from Sweden. Again, that's all I want to say. I want to hear what Jeff's got to say tonight. I'm super excited about this topic.
Go ahead and kick it over to Jef. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Cool. Go ahead, Jef.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me back, guys. It's been an interesting year, 2 years since we started doing this. So, just a little history. We really didn't respond to COVID the same way. Most of our production was being done already remotely or in the cloud. So whenever COVID hit, it was pretty much the same for the events that we were able to do. Unfortunately, the biggest part of our production division is live sports. there haven't been any. So that's been rough. But we pivoted, as many people did, and did more corporate events and things like that. The kind of things like Doug and Leila were mentioning earlier, where it's just online virtual conferences. We use a variety of tools. My tool set tends to be a little bit, probably, I guess, and most people consider it a little bit on the higher end, just because of my contacts and my experiences with it. I've been a new tech partner for years, 20 plus years, as a user, 25 plus years, or 30 actually. So I've been around that world of software, and always really enjoyed it. I always like being on the cutting edge and kind of doing a little bit more than just the normal what you could do with hardware. Always kind of, I guess we call it a guerrilla approach of somewhat of doing production. So as things kind of tend to move forward, we were always looking for more, I guess you would say, more ways to get the bang for the buck, but also more ways to do things that we were used to doing other ways, maybe with less, maybe with more. So that's kind of how things have changed over the years. In the last, like I said, 2 years, we made a big investment a while back in robotic cameras. The main reason is we were moving to 4K for our productions for these sports events. And when we did that, we at the same time bought into the Mark Roberts robotics cameras, which I'll show you a picture here in a little bit. There were completely IP controlled, which was a big thing that appealed to me. I wanted to be able to put the cameras out on the courts. We were doing professional tennis. So on the court, there were times it was 120, 125 degrees. No lie, put a thermometer down, it was boiling at the end. So we got to where it's just tough. It was long days, 10-hour days, 12-hour shoot days, because we were doing a full tournament. It was every match that was on court. As time changed and we started seeing the advantages at first of remote things in, I've used RoboCams and PTZs for years and years, decades probably now. And so I'm very familiar with them all. As we were using them, I always was thinking in the back of my head, it's like, we could be doing this at this, but they just weren't quite good enough. Even 2 years ago, they just weren't quite good enough. Regular PTZs. So I started looking at better heads, and I do also have an installation division. So we were doing installations in churches, and we were using a higher grade than just PTZs there. So they're better robotics, better movement and such. And so I was familiar with what real cameras on real heads looked like. And that's what brought me to Mark Roberts as I was looking around for a partner to help expand this part of our sports business. So as we were looking at them, the big thing that stood out to me was IP control. So it wasn't a long serial cable. It wasn't an extension over IP. It was true, inherent in the head IP control. So that's where our remote control part of this kind of discussion kind of came from, was starting off with those heads. The first step was to move back to the bus. So we use a tour bus. I'll kind of go through some of the pictures now. It'll be a little bit easier because nobody wants to look at me all the day. So here we go with, this is what we started out using here. So not started out, but what we were using the most. You should be able to see it there. This is our Prevo, one of our 2 tour buses. And I see one of our guys, I didn't even catch this in the picture, but those are coconuts that he collected. He's called the Squirrel. He lives up in Kentucky, and he's always collecting stuff and leaving it behind for us. So this unit here was actually all crew when we started using it. It was half of it is a tour bus, and this is what they would call an entertainer bus. It's not a motorhome. It's a tour bus, and in the front half is the master control, and the back half are bunks. And so everybody would sleep in the back during the day and during the week, or not during the day. Well, sometimes during the day when it was raining. So we do outdoor events, so it always rains. So that's what we're replaced. And then we moved, I might have to skip ahead a couple of pictures. Then we moved to a smaller format. This is inside one of our production vans now. And this is actually version 1. It's actually been remodeled now. It has one desk all the way down. And so this is the small van. These are the robotic cameras. that we were talking about, the Mark Roberts heads. And so they're IP controlled, but we first started doing this, it was to use them in the bus. And so the operators were in the bus, in the air conditioning. We didn't have to worry about all the problems of being out on the court and the exhaustion that it was taking. That's just my little work truck and one of the other production trailers. This is the master control that we're
Did
controlling.
you just refer to that as little?
I'm from Texas. That's a little work truck, yes.
That's a 650. That's not little.
It's relative. I drive a 45-foot
And
bus.
it's not a semi, but it's still not little.
Hey, neither is Jeff.
Or my son. My son is 6'6", so 300 pounds. He's a big boy, so it fits him. But yeah, it's just our little work truck, we call it. And so we moved into this remote production world where our master control, this is one of our master control setups. It's right to my right, actually. And so on the right side, you see the joystick, my favorite Scorhoy controller, which is now moved over to a different controller, courtesy of this guy I know called Joe. He has got this cool software called Central Control, best $50 you'd ever spend. May have heard that before, right? Yeah, buy it. So then the master control has morphed a little bit more, so we're using different controllers now, but necessarily we use a slew of different options, even stream decks and stuff too, to control the equipment that's on the far side. That was one of our little projects, a smaller project. This is one of our other production trailers. And then, as I said, the van, and then our Project X, which was our most recent deployment. And this is what I just recently went up and did a show in Detroit. We worked out of it. So as you can see, there's lots of space on a tennis court as we're around. So we have to run fiber out everywhere. We're running also all the internet for the whole, or the Ethernet and internet both for the whole venue. So we already had IP in place. That was a big part of what we were doing. So we didn't have to worry about, oh, this is one extra cable. It was already there. So it was just a matter of putting the camera into the box, and then the box of the switch in the box, and then connecting it back. And we use fiber optics to carry the length and the distances that we need. All our audio is already Dante, which is audio over IP. And so now all our video, as soon as it hits the box, is converted over into NDI. And NDI is, if anybody was paying attention a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, I guess now, NDI is video over IP. All right, so I'm going to take a second, let that all sink in. Now we have it all in IP. Audio, video, and IP. IP inherently means, to me, it doesn't have to stay in one place. So we immediately started thinking about, how can we make this work other places? The first step was master control, which was back here at the office. We went into with a copper line. I think it was, when we first started, it was probably 100 down and 10 up, something like that. Well, we quickly figured out we needed more. And we bumped it up as fast as we could in that copper side. Finally, this was 3 years ago. Finally, we got into fiber about a year and a half ago. And fiber was just game changing for us, because we had the bandwidth to throw anything we wanted to at it, to be able to bring as much as we wanted to into it. So the differences between what you can do with just the fiber line that's, say, a gigabit down, and then our primary line's AT&T is gigabit down and 200 up, 200 megabits up. It is plenty to do anything we need to do, and we don't have to have gigabit by gigabit. I have a backup line that's 100 by 100 by Spectrum, which, if anybody here has ever worked with Spectrum, you know that it's expensive. And it just continually gets more and more expensive, and it's a business class with an SLA service level agreement, so it just became just ridiculous. And so I scaled it back down. It's actually now down to just a 25 by 25, just to give something if we fell out of the big fiber of our AT&T. But I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had any problems with the AT&T, except when we had this little hurricane thing come through 3 times. So this year we were hit, our Gulf Coast was hit with 3 major hurricanes. 2 of those barely missed our city and went over and hit up my friends at Lake Charles, unfortunately. But it became even more evident to me. Now, this was, right in the middle of all this COVID mess. So it became more evident to us as we were sitting here, is like, if we were working out of our master control, one, we didn't have power for 3 days in one application. I have backup generators on the buses. I have backup generator here that I could tie into the building if I need to, but it's not easy. And so it's a pain. And so we started thinking more and more, and that's when it really started saying, it's like, okay, just having the ability to do remote production is just one part of the pie. It's just one small part. We need a better deployment in the cloud to make it easier to work in the cloud and do that remote production in the cloud. And that's what we've been testing and working with. And it's not just moving the cameras, but it moved to switching the cameras, doing the graphics, doing the replay. And it's like every single little part of a normal production in sports, every single little part could be done in the cloud. There, even audio. In Andrea, my QL1 shipped today, by the way. So I'll be hitting you up before too long for your little piece of the pie. Andrew's got just like Joe has a great interface, but Andrew's got a great interface to be able to do Yamaha to Yamaha control from console to console, and I can't wait to get my hands on that. But the audio side in the cloud has always been a little bit tough to do. We have recently been working with NewTek and VizRT to create, we're creating and testing with them. It's a plugin that allows us to manipulate NDI audio inside the cloud. For those of you that don't know, Dante inside the cloud doesn't work easily. Sort of works, but not really. It's just not simple. It's just inherently the way the cloud works and the way things work there, it's very hard to do. So we ended up going this other route with the NDI VST plugin. We can use a program called Ardor or Harrison, which is basically the for sale version of Ardor. Ardor is an open source version, and it's a DAW, but it also emulates a full-on mix machine and a mixer. And so you can mix with it using the audio in and out of this NDI plugin, which is really, really phenomenal to be able to not only strip the audio, de-embed audio out of the NDI video signal, but you can also embed and create new NDI signals with more audio channels. And see, inherently if you were paying attention last month, NDI has how many? Okay, this is a question time now. Ed, how many channels does NDI have of audio channels is in it?
Is it 16?
Well, technically that is a good answer. It is still a right answer. What is the max number of channels that NDI audio can have?
I thought there was no max number.
Oh, Omar's got the big star for today. You're right. Yep. So inherently, it's built where it's a open protocol that can not only increase the audio channel count, but also increase the resolution and fluctuate the resolution to whatever you need it to be. There is no limit on that per se, except your hardware and your software. So the software may not see all 8 channels or 4 stereos or 8 monos or 16 for that matter too, which NDI differs in that is that most people don't think of it being a multi-channel, multi-audio channel transport, but it definitely is. And so that's where we're using some of those extra channels in some of our productions to bring, I've got one coming up that's going to be quite testy. It's needing 10 different languages, all transported. And so we're going to be testing, and that starts tomorrow, that I start doing some tests with that, because we need to be able to bring those up into the cloud, then distribute those out to multiple Zoom rooms, so that this cluster of Zoom rooms will have Spanish, this cluster of Zoom rooms might have Dutch, this cluster might have German, this cluster might have I mean, 10 languages. So it's going to be fun. Can't wait. So that's part of the things that you can do with the audio and breaking it out in the cloud. So,
Jeff, quick question. Have you ever tried sending intercom audio down NDI?
All the time. We do it all the time. Yeah. But that said, due to latency latency because it is still a compressed format and it's going to take time to compress it, it's still better for me, I've found, to do audio for intercom purposes specifically. I do audio. Now okay, let me back up. So NDI audio, I'll do intercom in it if I need like a shot box back of the truck. And so I might strip out a couple of channels and just use it. Does anybody know what I mean by a shot box or a shout box? So it's basically a speaker in the truck saying, hey, put on your headset. So we'll use that as an embedded, and they'll de-embed it in the truck and then send it back out. We use Unity Intercom some, but my go-to is still VCOM. VCOM is another intercom over IP, comms over IP. VCOM is kind of like... best way I could, Unity is like using ClearCom. Like it's like a 6-channel party line. Now it's gotten better, and that's why I'm kind of using it a little bit more now, where VCOM is like using an RTS. So it's like using a full-on matrix, an Atom matrix, or one of the new Odins that allows you to send anything to anywhere, and anybody could listen to anything, and it's just a lot more flexible. Whereas with Unity, it's more or less about multiple party lines. And so even though you can do the groups and you can still do the individual talk to talk, it's just a lot easier in VCOM to be able to do it. And the other thing is VCOM is 100% PC from the server side. So it's super easy to put in the cloud. Whereas Unity is Mac based, and there's like 2 that you could put a Mac in the cloud. Otherwise you just end up using your Mac at the office, which is exactly what we do. Which is great, and it works fantastic, right, Doug? Doug has his Unity server in his trailer. When it's not connected, though, for whatever reason, maybe the antenna gets blown sideways, and you don't have internet at your venue anymore. Well,
wait. That happened.
Yes, that's why I brought it up. So when that happens, you lost your server, right? So this is all the things that we've found over the years is if we could put it in the cloud, there's one thing about the cloud. The internet doesn't ever go out. So if it does, we've got a lot bigger problems because it's just the way it inherently is built.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Fire away.
You say the cloud. What do you mean specifically when you say the cloud?
Okay, that's sure a big generalization. Okay, so I personally use a lot of AWS, so it's Amazon Web Services. So I use AWS as my primary, but we also work with Google Cloud. We also work with Azure. And a new one on the market is kind of a subset of a specialty boutique type cloud, which is called Paperspace. So I've used all of them, and I have to kind of be fluent in all. A cloud is effectively a virtualized computer of somebody else's. Okay. So each one of the instances that I'm working with is still running on a computer, but it's just a small subset of that computer. But
And
it's always somebody else's
in a
computer.
data center. Would you say the hardware is always housed in a data center?
We hope, right? And a data center meaning it has backup power, backup internet, backup AC, all the things that a data center comes is redundancy. They call it sometimes the 999 or 69. So it's up 99.99999%. And that however many more nines you go out, that means the price just goes that much further up.
Is DigitalOcean also is DigitalOcean also a cloud system?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, they're their own basically the cloud. I actually use DigitalOcean to host my Unify cloud server. Yeah, great company too.
Copy. Thanks so much.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we should have started at the very beginning, right? I kind of got lost there for a little bit, but I've got some notes here, and so I'm gonna circle back to something. So everything we do right now in production, we work around one thing and one thing only, and that is hardware limitations. Okay, Let that sink in. So you're working around, how many audio channels do I have? How big's your audio mixer? You're working around, how many video channels do I have? How big's your video mixer or vision mixer for those people across the bay? So you're always working around those technical hardware limitations, right? So the big thing that's different in the cloud infrastructure is hardware is not a limitation anymore. Software technically is not so much of a limitation either, because you can continue to scale and scale and scale and scale and build it out as big as you need it. Whereas in hardware, I have, say for instance, maybe somebody here uses an ATEM, like an ATEM Mini. That means you have 4 inputs, right? 4, that's it. But then the next step is, if I have a cloud vision mixer, no matter how many inputs I have going into it today, all I have to do is copy paste, and I have another cloud vision mixer, the same size or larger, whatever I need. And so the scalability is the big part that is the difference between working in a virtual space and working in just straight hardware. And then the other part of that too is, as people are changing their way of billing and the way that things are being cost, or I guess you'd say how costs are being managed. We're seeing that already happening in the corporate structure is, they don't want to do CapEx. So they don't do capital expenses that they have to amortize and they have to keep track of. They just want to know, what's it going to cost for this event? How much is it going to cost to do this? And so that's where the software as a service, where it's more of an operational expense, becomes very attractive to a lot of businesses, because it's a different line item. They may have to go through rigorous paperwork for 6 months to do a CapEx. But when it comes to an OpEx, it's just like, here's my card, take my money. So it makes things a little bit easier there. Big things that are changing in that space or the vendors, the video vendors, the audio vendors also, very slowly, but the video vendors especially have figured out this. And so things are moving to subscription services. Adobe did it how far back, right? And now everybody was like, oh, Adobe's dying. Adobe. How many people pay that $35 a month, right? And you just do it because it's part of it. You need the tools. And I think that's kind of where the difference is. It's slowly changing, but it's going to be there before too long, where we're looking at services in the cloud or virtual services as our means of doing production. But we're doing it right here. We're doing it on Zoom. We're not doing any hardware here, right? So we're already buying into that in some ways. And you've got a paid account. I know I do. I've got 10 users or something on mine. So those are things that we're paying for because we need this functionality. Otherwise, how would we be doing it? So some of the other cloud solutions that are already out there, some you may not have heard of them. I'll run through some of the bigger ones that I've had experience with. StreamYard is a great, just typical online. You can mix through a couple of different inputs. They are, I would say, probably on the forefront for a lot of virtual meeting type production. Restream.io is doing now. They have a kind of a live studio that is pretty close to where StreamYard is. ShowFlow, for those of you guys, I know, Joe, you nodding. Omar, I'm sure you've probably done ShowFlow rundowns and stuff like that. Huge in the event space. They've recently come out with a pretty cool concept, a studio. I'm a beta tester with them and I'm messing around with it a little bit. Another one that was in the space, like, it's weird to say where they were. They're in a clipping space. It's called Grabio. And they have an online kind of mixing solution too. A lot of these online things, they're bringing in RTMP video and audio. So it's delayed. It's not as fast as NDI or other IP protocols, or like SRT or even WebRTC. So they're kind of just, it's like switching from web stream to web stream. It's not really what we would consider in the sports production by any means like true switching, where you're on time and you're making things work. Where temporal changes in your sync between multiple camera views is a big thing. If you're going from one site to another site, those I mentioned, those are cool. That's pretty easy. Or if you're going from this speaker to this speaker over here, where you're not worried about having the same content in the same field of view, that's where in sports we have to worry about that, because you don't want somebody to, like, for instance, in our world, serve a ball and then you cut to the camera and they're serving again because things aren't synced up. So that's why the tools we use, we do multiple channels to make sure that things are always synced up. The other couple cloud services that are out there now is Grass Valley as AMP, which is AAMP. And then there is something from Sony, but I can't find the name of it anywhere. And I haven't really seen many people using it yet. And then my favorite and my love is the VizRT Vector Plus. And we're going to show you some more of that later. So those are kind of the big solutions out there right now. For those of you that don't know, VizRT bought NewTek 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago. And they were merged together, and Viz has turned into more of a software as a service type company instead of just hardware as they were before, where it was, and they were targeting, VizRT was 100%, if you don't know who they are, they're 100% targeted at the broadcast market, not the event market, the broadcast market, like TV stations, networks, bigger players. So the Viz Vector Plus is, I call it the growed up version of the TriCaster. So it's the TriCaster 2 Elite now, is about as close as it can be, except the TriCaster 2 Elite is a piece of hardware running software, where the Viz Vector is 100% in the cloud or on-prem, but it's running as a virtual machine. So it's using no hardware, video, or audio in and out. It's using all audio or video over IP. So other things that we, not by out of a little bit out of necessity and a little bit out of just because I'm stubborn and I just like to do things that weren't supposed to be done. Things we have used as solutions in the cloud are Livestream Studio, which actually I saw it 3 or 4 years ago, I guess it was. They were showing a demo of it and then they never did it, but I figured out how to make it work. Then somebody here might have heard of vMix. Every once in a while that gets used. Then there's as I was saying, the NewTek line, which is actually now the Viz Vector. And then graphics software, CharacterWorks is one of them that we use, has NDI output, so it's a great one that we use. Expression by Ross. Just recently, I successfully brought that into our cloud. New Blue Effects, of course, runs, and then there's another one called Singular, which Singular is a cloud service to start with. So it was very easy to integrate and make it work. So the big advantages of working with any of these software platforms in the cloud, you have nearly unlimited internet connectivity. One of our clients, we as I said, and not only do I do the production, but we actually not the Ross Carbonite expression. It's not a switcher; it's just the graphics side. Jay, thanks. Then the guys were using Sienna, which is a processing engine. I'll show you here lately in a little bit. They filled up a 25 gigabit NIC network adapter. So in your normal computer, you have a gigabit, and that's what everybody was like, oh, I'll never need that much. Never need it. Never need that much. Then we all got into video, and everybody was like, oh, well, we need more. Because for a normal gigabit line running NDI, you could do about 8 full res solutions. And when I say full res, that means that not NDI HX, but NDI running it at 1080p, you can do about 8 on 8 gigabits with a bandwidth of about 100 to 120 megabits per second. So by doing 8 per gigabit, that means basically I have 8 inputs. Well, they were running out of the NDI cloud, NDI processing engine, they were running about 120. And so it ended up as they were saying, hey, look, I'm having a few stutters here and there. I was like, okay, well, let me look at your stats. And I dialed in. I'm like, holy cow, how are you using a 25? Then I started looking at further about how much he was pushing it. But 25 gigabits is ungodly. It was like, well, is there a bigger one? It's like, yeah, it's 100. And it didn't run in the way, because there's different computers. So Andrew, you asked about that. It's like, so some computers are graphic central, so that's what we have to use for vmix or any of even the VisVector or any of these, because they have a GPU associated with them. Then there's others that are computational, which are strictly just CPU, and there's just nothing on the graphic side at all. You can't run other software like we're running that need a GPU. You just can't run it on it at all. Like Studio Monitor, NDS Studio Monitor just will not run on it because it doesn't have the skill set or the instruction set to be able to run. So we were looking at different options and stuff, and I did find one that was 400 gigabits per second, and it was crazy expensive even for cloud services, but it did exist, and we're finding that the AWS and definitely Azure is on top of these, is they're seeing the demand for a lot of us that are running vmix in the cloud or other options in the cloud that are stressing what they had where they thought they were sitting pretty. Now we've all figured out we can do things here, and so the demands on what's called a G instance in AWS is quite high, and so we have to be very careful about where we place our virtual private clouds, our group of computers that are talking to each other. We have to make sure that we start them early enough in the day so that somebody else doesn't pull that capacity. I have a large reservation of capacity just because I've been doing this for a while, and so I just keep adding to it, and in bigger shows I just keep adding to it. Whereas with somebody just starting out that we're building a system for, it might take them 2 or 3 months before we could actually get enough capacity for them to do typical shows. So it just kind of depends on where you're building it to. But like Bahrain, for instance, I have a client in Dubai that works out of the Bahrain data center. They don't have some of the same functionality that we have in Virginia. And same thing is Ohio. There was a run on Ohio about 2 months ago. I had 2 clients that were trying to use instances there. They couldn't ever start. And so we had to move their whole infrastructure that we built for them over to Virginia, and we could start them in Virginia. So these are all management things that we learn over the time as time moves on. That redundancy part is the coolest thing, though, is because like that was that day. It's like, he was a little freaked out in the morning, believe me, whenever he called me and says, I can't start anything, and I start in 2 hours. So we had already put into place a couple of saves of their what's called AMIs. Test time. Greg, what's AMI? Greg Gibson.
I don't know. Is there anything on AWS that's not in like Witch Doctor format?
Yeah. AMI, Amazon Machine Image. So that's when we're saving so think of it as like, oh gosh, man, we'll go real far back. What was it? Carbonite did it. Before that, Chris helped me. Chris Brown helped me. What was the one? Oh, Ghost. Oh, so like when you used to go back and you would take a ghost of a drive and you just basically copy the whole thing. That is an AMI. So you're copying that whole hard drive as a snapshot. And then you take that snapshot and you can move it anywhere in the world in AWS. It takes about sometimes 5 or 10 minutes. It really, honestly, it doesn't take that long. It seems like forever if you really need it to happen fast. Go, Leland.
My question, because I see this a lot in different vMix builds on the cloud, where do you typically house all of your asset resources? Do you keep them on a simple AWS server?
Well, every time when you build your login, you have a certain amount of storage that you're going to pay for it. So as you're building all those different devices and all these different computers in there, the different AMIs, you're saving those. If you terminate them, then they're gone forever. But if you just stop them, they're there. And so it's already there. But then you could build the secondary backup of it, besides your, basically call it your live AMIs. And then you have your saved AMIs, which would be like your template that you would build from new machines from. That is saved in that local data center. So you don't tell it where to, but it is saved in that local data center. And then
But
you're
say
just
I
paying
had a
for that
bunch-
storage.
Say I had a bunch of mortises and I needed them to get to 6 different machines. on
Oh,
the
okay.
system.
Right.
And they were grabbing assets and videos and whatever from a storage location, whether it was cloud-based or do people tend to find it easier to just go to another cloud server system for the file store so that everybody has access to that rather than only those who can access the AWS system?
Usually
like a Google Drive or a
Yes.
box.com or something like that.
Dropbox
does that work better?
probably, a matter of fact, that's what we did. We deployed for that IAB show was Dropbox, and that worked out really well. Dropbox, you have to be concerned with you used to have to be concerned with it because it would use data as you're backing up. It would always be updating. But with Dropbox, you could drop it in and then it's just there. It just shows up after a time of sync. So that definitely Dropbox is probably one of those ways. Google Drive can sort of do that. I have not lately been very successful. I use Google Drive every day, but I wasn't successful doing it without logging in to the actual system itself. So I had to log in with we have a production account. And so every one of our machines logs into that production account that has its own Google Drive storage. And then we share everything to that production account.
We're looking at a build for an international or national profile event, high profile event for the event in December. And in doing so, we're finding a lot of the governmental agencies can't access Google Drive. They can't access Dropbox. So we're using box.com as a transfer method to get videos back and forth right now. That's why I was curious if that's a way that we could upload assets to the cloud if we do decide, rather than the physical build we're doing now, to jump to the cloud and have 5 stations up there ready to go.
Yeah,
We
it just depends if it has an auto sync on it or not. But keep in mind, you have to still run those machines for it to sync. But the time it's going to take to sync in the cloud is going to be minimal versus coming up and down in say 100 megabit cable line in the cloud. You don't have those kind of issues. You're looking at 2,000 or 3,000 2,000 or 3,000 megabits per second versus 100. So it just depends. Yes, Ed.
I would love to take some questions if we're at a good point.
Yeah, let's fire away because I kind of got lost there for a little bit, and I'll come back to my notes in a second.
No problem. So Fred asked, remote internet satellite. What are you using? Are you using any satellite stuff or?
Elon has yet to ship my satellite. I have been waiting for it. I was one of the very first to get on the Starlink and want it bad. It would fit perfect on my car, but unfortunately, I haven't seen it yet. I have used KU. I have used KA. Those are 2 different satellites. Not C, because C's ridiculous. But KU, I've used it for data and also video. But most of the time now, it is the great toys from LiveView, and it's just all cellular backhaul. If we need something other than what hardline is there.
Got it. Great. Pete wanted to know who you are working with for interpretation. That's a big topic these days.
I honestly can't say at the moment.
Okay.
That's a client thing. Sorry.
Gotcha. No worries.
Well, here in Canada, we're really big on French. So if anyone needs French interpretation, hit me up. I've got a very long list. I can help you out.
That's great. I think the big thing people right now need also is the ASL, the sign language. I don't have any. I don't have. There's a vendor I know, but I don't have it on the tip of my tongue who it is. I'd have to dig. But moving on, Jeff, do you have? This is from AVI Trainer. Jeff, do you have any shareable cloud doc with links for the products mentioned in this event for people to have as a reference later? Thanks again for such a great chat and even better lesson. You've got a fan.
Oh, he's great. We've chatted a few times too, and we're. I don't have kind of a go-to on that because it's always changing. That's the thing. There's some basics in there, and in a few Google searches and stuff, you can learn a lot, but it's like every day almost. There's number one, every day Amazon announces another sliver of a product that you have to figure out, okay, how does this work? And what does this appeal to? Does this apply to me, or is it just for the guys that are doing machine learning or something like that? So it's been really tough, especially lately, to keep up with everything that's changing as fast as it's changing. So any document that I need to make a live document. That's what I really need to do, because anything that's not a live document that's always updating, it's out of date as soon as I type it.
You probably missed it, Jef, but as you were listing off different products and services you were using, I was frantically trying to get links to them in the chats. And
we could come back and make a more complete list. Sure.
Yeah, I was almost like your live list there for a minute,
Nice.
but I couldn't keep up with you. So I tried. I'm sorry, folks.
Hey,
You were doing a great job. Those links were flying in just as quick as he was saying them. I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
Hey, Ed, do you mind if I jump in with a quick question?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Hey, Jef, I wanted to jump back a second to when you were talking about having to move somebody over from the Ohio data center over to the Virginia data center. So, like, one of the big attractions of this for me is instant scalability. And so, were you saying that, like, even though this person had established a presence in Ohio, that they went to start up some machines and they couldn't start them up where they had already established that presence? So, so that instant scalability is a little bit of it's not really true then.
I personally have never ran into that in any of ours, except when I was firing. We did this thing for that little guy, Tony, thing, and I was firing 50 machines off of a script at one time. So meaning firing, I was starting up 50 machines. It wouldn't do it. It was too many for even though I had the capacity and then some, it didn't like it. So I had to scale it back and change my script. So I'd only start 5 at a time. So I'd start 5, wait 3 minutes, start 5, wait 3 minutes, start 5, and so on. So I think sometimes it has to do with Amazon and what they can handle at any given blast. But absolutely, it was that week. It seemed like there was more about the availability wasn't there. They haven't had near as many problems that I've heard lately. But you're having that flexibility to bump it to another data center if you don't plan ahead, which is, it was bad on me because I didn't help him plan ahead. But every bit of those reservations that you put in, like I have over 500. Okay, so a reservation is not a machine, it's virtual CPU. And so in each one of the configurations of the cloud server, you can have, say, an X large would only be 8 virtual CPUs. That's effectively like a quad core i7. Okay, so then the next step from that one might be a 2X. That might be 16 virtual CPUs. Next step after that, 30. I'm making these up because I don't actually have it memorized. And then it would grow exponentially. And then you end up with a big boy, the 24X, that's 96 virtual CPUs. So the vCPU limit that you have in your cloud is only for that data center. So you have to make sure that you go ahead and plan ahead for failure. Just like anything in any production world, plan for failure. Because if you don't plan for failure, then you won't be able to recover quickly. So I have in different locations around the world, I've gone in and made my request for more virtual CPUs. So those vCPUs are going to be available. They don't like giving them away anymore. It used to be, it's like, hey, give me 1,000. And they're like, oh, okay, here you go. Because nobody was using them. Now everybody's asking for them and they're being very strict about how many. So that limit that you have, so if you have a limit of say 64, you may only be able to start 3 machines or 4 machines. Or you have to scale your machines down, but then that doesn't do you any good. But if you were needing to scale up 1 machine, you could go up to all 64. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to follow up and say, like a question and a comment. One, the question being then, if you're going in from scratch, then does it make sense if you're going to establish a presence in the cloud to establish a presence in more than one data center? Because I know, like, when I set up my presence, I established one in Virginia and I established one in California just to have, redundancy. One redundancy. Absolutely. Exactly. But also just for the listeners and kind of what you're talking about in adding the additional virtual CPUs, everybody should understand that when you set up an account in the cloud, you don't automatically get access to unlimited number of CPUs. In fact, you don't in the base machine, when you set up an account in AWS, you don't even get enough virtual CPUs included to be able to do to run vMix. And so you have to actually request that, and it does take time to get that approved.
Now, I've seen it as fast as like 24 hours, but most of the time it's 72. And I have the perfect wording. I copy and paste when I set up my clients because it seemed like that's the triggers. But even then, I had one of them, I requested 128, and they put it on the wrong version. They put it on a C, which is a normal, just a computational type of interface of computer instance, instead of the G, which the G is what we needed. And so, they make mistakes too. They don't always read. Yeah, Dave?
I think John was first and then Omar, maybe?
Well, just a quick one. I've spun the Amazon up and down, and it only breaks when I really need it. So how many times have you failed on this?
In my experience, John, I haven't. We've never had a break. We've never had any downtime. And knock on wood, or just pre-planning, making sure that one time that, I have to admit, I was a little bit antsy whenever we were running that script and those machines wouldn't start. I have to admit there was some tightness going on. But I broke it back down and they started. It just was a matter of, if I got to do one at a time, I'm just going to click start and then refresh and start and refresh and restart. That was going to suck for 100 machines, but it was going to get there. But yeah, I've never had a massive failure, short of a couple of those clients, like I said, that just strictly could not start at all in the Ohio data center. And that may have just been a problem in that data center at that point in time, but I haven't heard it lately. Yeah, Dave.
So you seem like the luckiest man in the cloud sometimes when I hear you talk about these things. Are there services like yourself, or do you offer this service to just, because I hear you talking about clients and consulting, where we could just buy time on your luck, buy time where you would spin up the machine for us and hold our hands through it and then walk away, and we don't have a commitment to Amazon. We don't have a I've done it actually for a couple of different clients that were like that. They needed the expandability, but they didn't want to go full in, So we spun up, it was like 5 vMix machines, and we also tied it together with our Sienna processing engine so that it kind of helps. It's like the glue that holds everything together and makes it easier with NDI router and such, which we'll segue into that very shortly after we take a few more questions. But yes, absolutely, Dave. That's definitely, we can give you that kind of power. You can give you the power without necessarily you having to take all the keys. Great.
Yeah, thanks. Jeff?
Oh, you're muted there, Jeff.
Sorry about that.
Fire the A1.
Amazon has different services, so and I'm not super clear on them, but I am pretty much under the understanding they have dynamic scaling as well, and to where you can set your own thresholds. When your CPU gets to this threshold, have it automatically start expanding your farm and so forth. Do you have that? Do you avoid it? How do you? What's your experience with the dynamic scaling features, which are really automatic inside?
I haven't had I prefer to have more of that control myself. Mm-hmm. So it's not as much of a, how do I put this? When you're looking at that situation where the elasticity that they have ability, that is more designed at more computational type of use. So it's not really about the graphics side. And I don't know how flexible, I haven't tried it successfully, how flexible vMix would be, because at a certain point, vMix will use X amount. And so we use a 4X, which is 16 by 32, so 32 virtual CPUs. That's pretty much a given. And it doesn't matter with vMix. If you give it 96 virtual CPUs, it's not going to perform any better. At a certain point, it's just going to be, this is it, I'm done. And we actually got some information back that that a client was kind of beaten up on vMix about. 8, we're going to put this out there, I know it's going to be public, but vMix will only do 8 NDI, full res NDI in the cloud. And it comes down to the virtual CPUs is not just about the number of virtual CPUs. It comes down to the clock speed. So the clock speed that these virtual machines are running on, especially the G instances, the G4s that we're using, that clock speed is a lower clock speed than what you would get if you had something sitting on the ground on premise. So those are certain things. And then at that point, what do? Right? You don't just turn up the virtual CPUs, you just spin up another machine. And that's why so many people are doing that, and they're layering, okay, they're creating a switching environment virtually where you have vMix A, B, C. This is exactly what we did for the IAB a few weeks ago. vMix A is handling one event or one breakout room. B is another breakout room. C is another breakout room. Or you can look at it as 3 different types of callers coming in, and then they're going to the vMix M, which is doing a mix down of A, B, and C. Does that visually make sense? Okay.
When you're doing
the master's on the cloud too, though, right? Everything you've got 4 virtuals with a master virtual.
Yes, exactly.
When you're doing graphics and playback and stuff like that, are you streaming those feeds to the cloud, or would you have a virtual PowerPoint machine that you're just remoting into?
If I'm going to be in the cloud, I'm going to live in the cloud. That's where everything is. Yeah. So that was the same situation, Dave. Is for them, every vMix A, B, C had their own Zoom/PowerPoint that each one of those were running PowerPoint out of. And within that becomes some challenges, to say the least, in the virtual market, the virtual meeting market is, they wait to the last minute to give you those PowerPoints. And then, or do they have audio? Do they have video? Do they have links to video? Does the audio need to be played? These are all the same issues you would have on the ground. They're just multiplied into the cloud at that point. But you're just using remote software to control that other machine. Yes, Omar.
Sorry, Jeff. Just lots of good information here. Lots of great questions. We got a few more left on the Q&A side, but I wanted to know real quick. We're at the hour mark right now. Can we continue on? Do you have a lot more content, or do you want to keep going with the Q&A?
Got a lot more. We can go for hours.
if anybody objects to my comment here, can we get Jeff to move forward so we can keep learning from him? And then we'll come back at the 30-minute mark, ask a few more questions.
Sounds good.
I don't think Leland wants me to do that.
Leland's looking around to hunt people is what's going on.
I was holding him to gunpoint to make sure he sticks around for a little longer.
All right. So advantages of cloud production. I touched on it. It's like the unlimited internet connectivity. You don't have to worry about speed there. Redundancy options, meaning you could, as we talked about, spread your load throughout the world. It doesn't have to be out of just one data center. It could be off to multiple data centers in multiple locations. For me, like I said, I had hurricanes coming through here. It became very, very evident that I wasn't going to have internet. I wasn't going to have power. I needed somewhere to continue doing work. After that, the distributed workflow is the big game changer that most people just don't think about. So whenever we were doing this show a couple weeks ago, Doug was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Beautiful place, by the way. Highly suggest to go through and do a football game on a Friday night with Doug. We just did that, and that was fun. Leland is outside of Detroit somewhere, right? So he was
between Lansing and Flint. Yep.
Okay. So then we had another operator in Houston. I'm near Houston, but he just a friend of mine, Sal, that's in Houston. So that's geographically, and for those people that are not in the U.S., it's pretty spread out. Considering I just drove 2 days to get back from Fort Wayne, yes, it's very spread out. But with that workflow being spread out, it doesn't matter where you are. You can still work in the cloud, wherever that is, remotely. So you have to think more about, it's not about, do I just get the content from here to here? It's also about, I'm controlling it from here to here to here to here to here, anywhere. I'm controlling those same machines. So whenever you're in our workflow in the sports world, if we were going on a break, say for instance, the guys on site, so we used to have that big tour bus, we had 6 or 8 guys on site. Now I've got 2, maybe 3 sometimes on a larger show, maybe more if we have a really large show, but most of the time it's 2. So if one of those guys needs to take a bio break, or one of those guys needs to go grab lunch, he jumps on the comms and says, hey, can you take over? Dwayne, who's in one of my guys named Dwayne, is in Lafayette, which is 2 hours away from here, or Robert that's sitting next to me in the office here. Hey, can you take over? He's switching the show, operating the camera, rolling graphics, whatever needs to be done to take over for that person's thing. So that's the distributed workflow that's just game changing for most people in the world. It really becomes more of, it's about a quality of life for my guys. So the very large amount of money I invested in these cameras, the robotics heads and everything else, and the infrastructure to make all this work, it was not just about, I'm not saving money by any means. I would save money by putting people out on the court, but I'm able to keep my staff happier. I'm able to keep my people involved and reduce the number of burnouts of traveling. Everybody loves to travel at first. It gets old. It does. It gets old. Yes, Omar, it does.
I still love to travel all the time.
I do too, and that's the reason I drove up to Detroit and back. But I have to say,
not staying in the right places.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had shows in Maui, and it didn't matter. It's just another tennis court at that point. It's just, that may be pretty in the morning, maybe pretty in the evening, but I never got to experience or anything like that. But some of them, all the places we go and do things, they're like, oh, no, we didn't get to see the same tennis court that was the same as the other tennis court. It's not that big a difference. But the travel of just being away and not having a home life and things like that. Now my guys can be home for a week, go out for a week, come back home for a week, but they're not off the clock. They're still working. They're just working remotely. And so it's a lot less wear and tear on the people that are part of us. And that's what that's the big part of what my takeaway was going remote was, it's not about saving dollars by any means. The travel, you save a little bit, but it doesn't level out to what I had to spend to get that travel to go down. It's more about making people a little bit happier with their life and bringing that quality of life higher. The other part of this is whenever you start talking about a distributed workflow, whether it's cloud or remote basis, and this is where it gets really exciting. I know that, and he's watching, and I'm going to call him out, Brian Maddox, he's tinkered around with audio. So he's kind of good in the audio world. I could put him on a show and not travel him using Andrew's software between my QL1 and his, does he have CL5s or QL5s, whatever, CL5s, or Ed for that matter. See that beautiful soundboard that Ed has right behind him right there? So he could turn around and run that board, running my audio, and I'm going to get a quality A1 for that day. Or it could be for that show, for that 2-hour game, or that, morning breakout session, whatever it happens to be. Then we're going to turn around, and the next day, that same A1 has the capability to do another show. I didn't have to fly him from Kansas to LA, and he lose a day in between. Now he's working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, instead of traveling Wednesday, getting there, doing a show set day on Thursday, show on Friday, maybe picking up another on Saturday, and then traveling back. So now this is where that distributed workflow becomes into a much larger picture, because now they can work more. You get the better quality people because they don't have to burn up days on the far side, on the beginning side or the end side of every event. And so that's a big thing that's changing in the overall production that I see, overall production world, as we get back to events and such, we're going to see more of this. Without a doubt, we're going to see a lot more of this.
Jeff, I'm ready. You got my number.
All right.
I'm ready.
It's going to happen.
I love the commute. I love the commute when I can just walk over to my desk and start working. So put me in, coach. I'm good.
Well, the thing that I was, as we were working, we were always joking around the company. It's like, look, I don't care if you put pants on or not. It's like, just be able to be there and be able to wag your little joystick and make sure that you can get the camera focused in. That's all I care about. I don't care what you look like. Just be there on time, get on comms, and let's roll. Right. So that's kind of where the advantages kind of right now, the big advantages will stop there. Let's talk about what Leland pointed out, some disadvantages. So it's not all rosy. There are things that you have to prepare for. As much as I love it, I will say, yes, there are some challenges, to say the least. Number one, latency. And a lot of people will focus on this severely to the point of like they're driving people nuts because they think that's all that matters. The latency of me moving this joystick and controlling a camera on the other end is so surprisingly fast and accurate. It's scary. It really is. Doug's ran camera for me multiple times. You give them the preview video, it's as fast as we possibly can get it, whether it's a WebRTC or even something as simple as just as TeamViewer. But whenever Doug is giving that camera and focusing, he's following the action. We're not just going preset to preset. We're following a player. So it's not about the latency there is not necessarily the issue. The issue comes in is whenever you spread out. Light is light, and fiber will only take light so fast, right? So whenever you start moving from LA to New York, it's going to be this much every time to move that light and to move that data packet. Now move that over across across the Atlantic from US to say where Joe's at in the UK, or even further down in like my clients down in Dubai. It made a difference. So we had to relocate some resources around those areas. And that's one reason why I stick in the Virginia. And then we do have some stuff in the California data centers of being able to do things a little bit more regionally based so that that latency is as low as possible. But that said, it usually is not anything that would have to matter as much whenever we're carrying video and audio from the ground up. Now, if we were doing a big time, multiple person type of thing where you had people singing and more of a choir type thing, and you're trying to bring in multiple people in multiple areas, that's a nightmare. Just don't even bid on it. Just say no. Just say no. Sorry, it's just not worth the pain.
That's the beauty of pre-records.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
The key there is really about whether you want real-time engagement or not, because you're not going to get cloud. If you want real-time engagement, you're going to have to build a rock-solid system in the studio on the ground.
False. That is completely false.
Well, I don't mean it in that regard, Jeff. I know what you're saying. I totally agree with you in that regard. I'm just saying to get the latency pulled down to a little less, because I'm on a similar connection like you mentioned. I'm on a 35,000 down type connection, and it's great for broadcasting. But if you're trying to collect and then stream a ton of data out, you're kind of stuck. You've got to move up to the cloud no matter what. So
yeah, well, and that's one of the things. It's like, and if you lose that line, the cloud system's still running.
Yeah.
And that's the big advantage is the system in the cloud is still running. Even if you dropped off your TeamViewer connection, your Teradici connection, whatever, your remote control connection, if that drops off, it doesn't matter because then somebody else can just dial right in. And that's exactly what it was like. Oh, look, they're stuck. And usually that's why we use a different, Andrew, back to your comms question, we would use a different comms system that's aside of the video transport and the audio transport so that we would always have comms no matter what, if at all possible. But even that might drop out, but still we have a little bit faster and more accurate way of communicating.
I did a show, Jeff, the other day, and the TD's internet connection dropped mid-show. Thankfully, I had the same central control project and the same controllers on my desk. So I just got on Unity, I got on the director channel, listened to the director, and the show carried on. No one knew the TD had gone offline.
Yep. That's a perfect example of why. So other disadvantages, I'm gonna go through this quick because I got a feeling we're gonna run out of time. We're gonna go real late, one or the other. Doesn't matter. I haven't been on sleeping for about 2 days now, so I can go forever. Keep pumping that caffeine in. So
You're welcome.
thanks. Controllers to the cloud. The number one, you have to look up this guy called Jodamax. It's centralcontrol.io. I feel like I'm a commercial for him because I love his stuff. It has made it so much easier for us to bring multiple controllers and devices into the cloud or into remote situations when we need to have remote control. Joe's stuff is really, without a doubt, cutting edge. There's other ways of doing it. Squirrelway I've been using them for years. It's an IP-based protocol. I have to create a VPN and a virtual private network link up between the ground and the cloud. And so these have to talk, and it's a pain in the butt. Joe's stuff, just open it and go. You may need to do a VPN sometimes. Other times you might have to do a port forward or something like that. If you don't know how to do that, get in touch with me or somebody else that understands that. And that's it. And you're good to go. And so then your hardware is talking to the cloud, controlling the cloud, just as if you were on the ground talking to that machine that's over there. It's very much easier. So the control options, other USB options that I've found is FlexiHub and also TGX, which is it's like Teradici. Teradici does it also, where it carries a USB across their virtual control. You get those, Ed? And then there's a few couple hardware devices that I've hit and missed with on they basically have like a little box. It's called a USB IP server. And that box, you put your USB device into that. Then that box has its destination software that's in the cloud. It's a pain in the butt. They rarely work. I prefer the software solutions like FlexiHub or what was that other one? Not USB Anywhere. Maybe that's it.
Virtual Here.
Virtual Here. That's it. Yeah. Virtual Here was the other one. And I didn't have good success with Virtual Here, actually.
I wish they would put the Stream Deck with Cat 5, like IP-based Stream Deck. I wish they would go away from this USB thing. They need to bring out
I think it's a
3.
cost thing.
It's consumer. Yeah. It's gaming tech. It's not.
Yeah, I was just going to say that wasn't designed. You're using it the way it's not designed to be used. So calm down there. Don't change my product that I use, please. No, I'm joking. But seriously, it's not in mind because it was designed for gaming, for switching Twitch platform and scenes and sources and start playing music and stuff like. It wasn't designed for companion based the way you guys are using it now. So there'll never be an internet port on it.
That sounds like a Raspberry Pi project for someone who wants to make some money.
Actually, I've seen a couple of guys trying to do that.
You just make a companion Pi.
It already works.
Yeah, I was gonna say companion Pi, and then you can actually change the networking node to be an intake signal versus an outtake signal. You can route it any way you want it to go.
But those tools, those are things that we've had to adapt to. And that's I keep going back to Joe's stuff. It's so easy to be able to go hit his software and then just let it take care of, and you could reprogram it to do different things. So one of the big questions that always comes up, also Dave kind of alluded to it a little bit, is whenever we're talking about the cost of the cloud, it's substantial to get into it at first. I mean, whether you pay someone like me as a consultant to get started into it, or if you needed to do it yourself, you're going to spend hours. Literally hours doing it. So with that in mind, let's talk about cost. At first, everybody thinks, oh, we're just going to the cloud. Look at this. It's per hour. Is it? Okay. So the instances that we're using now are about $1.20 an hour. Great. Shows an hour. I paid $1.20. No, that's not how it happens. You have to have it for prep work. You have to have it for pre-production. So now your hour went into a day and you forgot to turn it off. So it ended up costing you 2 days, or 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how often you're. I'm on it. I'm on my AWS account every day. So there's been times too, I'm like, you're a dummy. And, I had 8 machines running and just let them cook overnight for no reason at all. But then whenever we're in show mode, we never turn them off. I could, mostly because I'm afraid of that that byte coming back from AWS is whenever I go to turn them back on, they're not there. And that availability, as you talked about, Greg. So whenever it's a show weekend, I'll let them run. It's not worth the cost. So that whole day is $26.88. Where can you rent a computer for a 24-hour period for $26.88?
Do you restart before show?
Not usually. No.
We always restart an hour before show, and that makes me feel more confident. But with you saying it might not come back on, I feel
no. If you're restarting, you have it already. Okay. You have the allotment already. But if you're starting but if you're stopped and you're starting the instance, that's different.
Right. Okay. Got it.
That's where the availability comes in.
So quick question, Jef. Is there a way that you couldn't build the studio set up completely on a VPN structure outside of the cloud and then upload everything to it? It sounds like you're building the production on the cloud during the week. Why couldn't you do that on the standalone machine and then upload all that data into the cloud?
You could, absolutely. But depending on your platform. For me,
you'd have to get drive structure right, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And your folder structure has to be perfect. One of the problems we had with that other show, they were associating content that was on the C drive. We put a media drive in. It was a D drive. And so thus everything had to be relinked. And
I have a solution, Jef.
Tell me more, Joe.
It's this is completely free.
Joe.
It is the vMix
I know what he's talking
manager.
About. Yeah.
Open the vMix project, click a few buttons, and you can really quickly. It's like in Premiere, you've got a bunch of files that are offline, and you point it at one, and it looks through that entire directory structure, finds them all, and says, "Great, got them," and then it just saves it out as a new project. And I actually just released a new version of this that you can actually use on your local machine to save the vMix project to a new folder with all its assets to then upload to the cloud, and that's completely free. So download that.
That's awesome.
I'll link somewhere so I can get that right.
I'll put it in the I'll put it in the chat.
I told you, Joe
Thank
DeMax,
you, Joe,
man,
you're a king.
It's the hair. It's all about the hair. It's good people. All right, so we were talking about that manipulation and know where those files are. It's similar structure. You still have a C drive. If your instance is the ones we use, the G4s, there's a D drive or whatever you letter it to be, and it's just a matter of starting that one up every time you start the instance. So it's just a matter of checking off, those things whenever you get started. And that is the other reason. It's like whenever you start that instance in the G series, especially the G4 series, whenever you start that instance, you have to tell that drive, that extra drive, you have to format it, add it to Windows, and format it. It goes away if you stop the instance. So, Joe, that's the other reason why we keep them running, is so that I don't ever have to worry about somebody stopping that instance and all the data that I saved, all the setup, and everything I did to the D drive goes away.
Right.
So that's the thing. The temporal storage is very important to keep in there. So, and that's where I would record to, because that's the faster. It's an SSD drive, and in larger instances, maybe even larger. You can add other storage to it too. So that's where I just keep them running from rehearsal day through the end of the show. That's policy for me. So how do you control the cloud? First off, you have to learn SSH. If you don't know what that is, Google it, and please help me learn it, because it is a pain in the butt. But it's command line commands. It is just the way the cloud was manipulated for so long. Now, it's gotten better, for sure. You can do a lot of things using the Amazon controls and such now that you can actually go into it. I have to use SSH because I have a lot of Ubuntu boxes that we're doing a lot of things with now, which I'll get to in just a second. And because of that, I have to get into it. And I grew up with MS-DOS, and Apple IIe's was my first machines. I didn't want to be a computer programmer. Otherwise, I would not be doing what I'm doing. But I've turned into this computer programmer now as time's gone on, because it's just I have to learn it in order to be able to use it. And it's definitely just one of those things. It's a skill set that we've had to teach ourselves, just like IT. I didn't want to be an IT nerd either, but that's what my wife calls me now. So as you're working in the cloud, one of the main things you want to have, a lot of monitors. as I showed you in my picture earlier, I'll pull it back up again. The reason for a lot of monitors is you need to see multiple machines. So as you see on this, I'll try to mouse over it. I've got 8 different machines plugged into these two monitors. These are the 43-inch, I think these are the Dells. Yeah, and so they have 4 inputs per monitor. It's a 4K monitor split into 4 quads. And then we have these 2 touchscreen monitors that are down on the bottom. But we actually have now, after this picture was taken, and next to me now is there's 2 more of those monitors up top. So we actually could see a total of 16 different computers in that. Doug,
you can't have enough monitors.
Doug has this. There's one thing about having enough monitors. Then there's an addiction. Doug has the addiction. It's worse than crack for him. He just keeps adding more monitors to his trailer. And it is one of those things. Is with monitors becomes like the more machines you have, you either have to have multiple tabs of those machines, or you need to see them. And that's where it comes into play. So the next part out of that is the software interface. So we use TeamViewer, without a doubt. We use TeamViewer. We use TGX, which is by Mechdyne, which is a okay replacement for TeamViewer, or Teradici. Teradici is hands down my favorite, because Teradici is just a very quick and easy to use interface. It's just like you're sitting at your machine. It's amazingly quick and accurate. So that is kind of where we've ended up with our interfaces, besides the hardware software combinations like we did using Central Control with Joe's stuff, and the Scarhoy controllers. Awesome. So that's kind of a pausing point. Let's take a couple questions, and then we're going to talk about some real fun stuff up in cloud software.
I hear you saying C drive and D drive and stuff. You must be all Windows, right? Everything's running Windows?
Oh, anybody that knows me knows that I like to use 2 different types of computers, either a PC or a Windows. And, okay. And as my friend always said, is good friends never let other friends use Macs. Right, Omar?
Yes, you do say that. You say that.
I don't know if that came up. No, there's reasons, but Macs as a whole in the cloud, because the virtualization has to be on Mac hardware, makes it very hard and very expensive. There is one called Mac Stadium that I have a friend of mine that's running Unity on, and he's using it on, and that, I think they have 2 data centers, one in the West Coast and one on the East Coast, but he's running on the East Coast, and that data center, just like a Mac Mini is like $150 a month minimum or something like that. But that's Mac Stadium is the only other one. But that's just one of the things, is there's not enough demand for Mac-based software that's out there to be able to use. I can't imagine trying to do Pro Tools or something like that in the cloud. That just probably would never happen. So why don't we take just a couple minutes and do some questions if we have some, Omar?
Yeah, we definitely have questions. David had asked, are any streaming providers you use so far providing SRT inputs?
I recently found one. Honestly, I don't remember the name of it, but it was huge. It was on a Facebook ad, actually. And it was like, we take in SRT. And that was their whole marketing ploy at that point. We would do it, but we use Wowza server in middle. So we would do SRT into our Wowza server, then we flip it over to RTMP or the Wowza cloud at that point.
Gotcha. Great. George E. Kennedy Jr. asked, hey, Jef, are you assigning elastic IPs to all your machines?
Yes and no, not all. So some, specific ones that I like. For instance, our comm server, I don't want it to change, but I also use. Here's the link. Let me make sure I'm gonna type it first to make sure I have the right. Okay, it's freemyip.com. And it's a free DNS, so it allows you to put in a domain name in the preface of that freemyip.com, and then that domain name or subdomain would be always pointing at a certain address. You could do it permanently, or you could put it in as a startup in your computer, so that whenever your browser starts, it actually pings that address and says, "Hey, I'm over here. I'm at this new address." Because every time you start a new, unless you have an elastic IP associated to it in AWS, every time you start it, there's a new public IP address. Doesn't always matter, but if you have people pointing at that public IP address for SRT reasons, for instance, it'd be nice to have it to be elastic and permanent and all the time. But if your software can take it, now that's the only problem I've found is the FreeMyIP, that subdomain .freemyip.com, some software will only want to see digits for the DNS for the domain, whereas instead of that's it, Omar, instead of an actual name. And then I also use my own domain. I'll put in like unity.pizzazz.com is my Unity server, or vcom.pizzazz.com is my Unity server, and then I go into my web page and my DNS controls, I'll point it to whatever IP address I need it to. So there's a couple of different ways to do that, George. It just depends on how deep you want to get into it.
So just real quick for the community out there in Facebook, I am not able to, and it seems like this is a common thing, we are not able to post the freemyip.com link within the Facebook comments. So if you guys are tuning in, get that verbally, because we cannot post it. I'm not sure why, but it's not allowing us to post it in Facebook comments. And then second one, leading into what you were saying just a moment ago, one of the questions that came up, which I think you had kind of already answered, it was about the elasticity. Hey, Jeff, are you assigning elastic IPs to all your machines? I think Ed just answered that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we just asked that. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Someone had asked, and I think you answered this earlier, what solutions are you using in the bonded cell area for backup streaming? I think you said you're using LiveView solos, correct?
No.
Or LiveViews?
No, we are using the full-on LiveViews, and I so wish that I could unzip this guy right here and show you what I'll be receiving, because it was supposed to be here today. But this is the little one. This is the old one. This is the old school LU600 4K version. I have the new LU800 that'll be here tomorrow. Apparently, the tracking, as I found out, the 800 is an amazing piece of gear. It was actually one of the things I wanted to show. So I'm going to share a screen, and let's see if we can get it shown up here. Let me do a little Alt Tab real quick, because when we're talking about cloud, and there we go. This is going to be a game changer in it. It is 100% changing the rules. So it is a 4 input device. So it's not just, it's either 1, 2, or 4, but it allows you to not only use the terrestrial or your ground actual Ethernet connection, your internet connection on the ground, but also the modems in the device itself. And this unit can come up with either 4G LTE or the new 5G stuff, non-corona creating, of course. But whenever you're actually going out and doing productions in the middle of nowhere, this piece of gear is going to be a game changer, without a doubt. And so 4 different feeds going up to the cloud with that many modems for backup. So you could have T-Mobile, you could have AT&T, you could have Verizon, you could have Sprint, which of course that and T-Mobile are all the same now, or you could just go down to Walmart and buy a bunch of prepaid stuff. But this is going to be a huge game changer, because now it's not just about that video backhaul part. That's solving the problem of video backhaul going to the cloud. It is their own proprietary format called LRT. Unlike this guy here, which is the other one that I'm testing and using. This is the Matrox, as you can see on the back, 4 different inputs there. This is the Matrox Monarch Edge. This one is a $10,000 box. This is a 10-bit box. So 4 video inputs into this, SRT out, and that could be SRT to one of their decoders, which should sit on the ground, or it could be SRT to my cloud setup. And that is exactly what I want to see, because I need easy ways to be able to get that content up to the cloud. Once it's in the cloud, then I can do anything with it, right? And then I can manipulate it and do whatever I need to do. All right, now 25 minutes left if we push it. We're going to put the gas down. Do you want to do 2 more questions, Ed, and then we'll go for
it? Sure. We'll have to allow some more time at the end then to get to these, because we have more than 2 that have stacked up.
All right.
So when using NDI in a production from his home office, Mike is saying internet bandwidth is not a factor, correct? As long as the switch itself has the gigabit throughput, that's what matters for production, correct? He understands he needs internet bandwidth to get it out to his CDNs, but I guess for NDI,
that is correct.
It's more the internal. Yes. So you want 10 gigabit switches,
but you don't have to do 10 gigabit, but
if you're doing a ton on NDI stream.
When you say ton, over 10, over 8. Technically, because you could do about 8 on a gigabit. But that said, you need to make absolutely sure that your router is not interfacing. Don't go through like a Netgear or something like that and think that this switch on it is going to be handling the same kind of quantity of content as, say, for instance, your a full-size switch is. So you would want a full-size switch with a backplane that actually gives you enough bandwidth to be able to do whatever you want. It's not going out, but you still want your inside network to have an adequate switch. That's a big key to successful.
Gotcha. Bob had asked, Dave Node was asking about control of PowerPoint machines in the cloud. Can this be done through NDI, or what's the best practice? So how are you controlling those?
Honestly, guys, I'm not doing a whole lot of PowerPoint stuff in the cloud. Just a few here and there. We're trying to prevent them from giving us that kind of stuff if we can. But Internet Pickle, I think, is one that we tested. And Leland or Doug, do you remember what that one was? Internet Clicker. That was the other one. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan, it was the person we worked with on this IB show that we used it, and it did work really well. I really like the Internet Clicker. The Pickle, maybe that's the other one, but it was basically a version of the same thing where you put a code in, that machine only listens to the remote person that has that code. So it gives you some flexibility. Personally, I just give them TeamViewer access, and that way they could build up, make changes, which they always want to make changes at the last minute for PowerPoint. So that way they're just controlling that computer just like as if it's sitting on their desk. Yes, Jeff, Pickle remote. That's it.
Yeah, I've heard great things about the Pickle. I haven't used it yet, but from what I've read, you can interface it with a DSAN.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
You can.
Yes.
So if you have the actual clicker, you can put that together. So great. How many inputs are you running on a 4x AWS? We're running 8x and 16x's and still run into issues at times.
Okay, that goes back to, I'm assuming you're talking about vMix. I would just assume that because there's not very many of us using the Vector Plus. In my Vector Plus, I can have up to 44 inputs without a problem, but it's because of the software built in that system. It is built for NDI use. vMix was not. vMix's code does not allow, yes, it's quote unlimited, but they basically have a limit of around 8 NDIs due to clock speed. As I mentioned earlier, the clock speed of the virtual machines is not as fast as what you could put on a machine that's on the ground. So doesn't matter how many virtual CPUs you throw at it, you're going to hit a certain limit of what the vMix code itself can handle in NDI.
Jef, have you tried any other softwares other than vMix on a cloud build? Like we've got Bid Blaster out there, which is a German build. It's very similar in nature to, or even Wirecast or anything of that nature. Or
OBS, but not
OBS?
Wirecast. I can't stand. It's just
I don't like
personal
it. Sorry,
preference.
Sorry, you Wirecast guys.
I'm just
anything but VidBlaster.
And VidBlaster, I can't honestly. I don't like it either. But no, I my favorite is what we're going to talk about now is without a doubt the bigger boy, the elephant. I guess you'd call it the elephant in the room, the Vector Plus. I come from a long, and that's one thing. Even with vMix myself, I just prefer to use these other tools. I come from a long line of using TriCaster platforms, and they've worked very well for me. They've made me lots of money. I just like them. They have a workflow that works for me. So I have been pushing them hard about getting this. And I was using this before COVID hit. We were doing some testing with them, and it's just been a matter of process of getting all the I's dotted and the T's crossed to make sure that this was right for the market. So that's kind of where I am when it comes to the bigger any of the productions, whether it's small or large. One more question, Ed, and then we'll kick it into overdrive.
Great. So, are there ways to provide automatic failover of particular services? Have you explored running this on Azure as a potential backup for what could be eventual infrastructure issues on any platform that provides only 3 nines?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it all comes down to your infrastructure of what you're planning for. A recent client that just went live in the last week, he is a phenomenal engineer. I got him started in it. We're using a company called Sienna that builds ND processing engine. The NDI processing engine is kind of like a rack of glue that just kind of holds everything together. It allows us to be able to do failover, and it runs on Ubuntu, so it's rock steady. It's not a Windows-based machine. It's rock steady. It allows us to do failover between multiple instances. So video feeding into it, video feeding out of it. We can also have failover between multiple Sienna engines also, the processing engines also. It all comes down to how do you build anything as planning for what failure you possibly could have and making sure that you plan appropriately. As far as being able to bounce between AWS and Azure, that's going to be a whole nother world. That is going to be harder because those are completely different platforms. Now you could double up and have your SRTs going one way, but you're still going to have to repoint them to the other direction whenever you have a failure in that other place. So at some point, there's always a failure point. That's basically what I'm saying. You just keep the redundancy building as much as you possibly can to prevent those failure points from taking you off the air. Okay, so I'll come back to that a little bit.
Yeah, go right ahead, Jef. We have a couple left, but we'll hold those to the end.
Take a sip of your drink, whatever it happens to be. This is gonna blow some of your minds. I know, because it still blows my mind on some of the things that we do. All right, so I am going to share my screen now, and let me put some things back to default so that we can see. So what I'm going to show you is what we're using in the cloud. This is that glue I was telling you about. This is what we're using in the cloud to build out our infrastructure. So it's the Sienna NDI processing engine. As you can see on the left side over here, let me just create a new frame so that we don't have anything that's, I'll probably use that about 13 times. All right, there we go. So over here on the left side, You can see all these different modules that we're just going to add in. So think of this as like an open gear rack for those of you guys that are in the broadcast space that knows what open gear is. So this is like an open gear rack, but it's all software based. And so all these microservices allow us to bring in and out different functionality of this system. So my first thing I want to do is like, I want to grab, say for instance, SRT. So I want an SRT receiver. I'm going to bring that SRT in. I can do SRT and go straight to NDI. And then I might want to take that piece and then I want to bring it into, I might probably need more than just one input, right? So we're going to go SRT to SRT, NDI, SRT, NDI. And I'm just dragging these in, bringing them in. And once they're here, I'll delete that one real quick, give us some more space. Once they're here, then I need to be able to see those. And so at that point, I want a multi-viewer. So now I'm going to grab a multi-viewer. This is just a simple 2x2. And now I'm going to take these video signals. So just like I'd be doing a flow chart to drag out and draw my video signals from point A to point B, I'm bringing them into here. Now, once I have them into my multi-viewer, I'm going to go in and say, well, I want an output. Well, there's multiple ways I can do my output, but I want a destination. Now that, and I'm just going to call this multi-viewer test. There it is. So my endpoint name here is going to show up in my cloud as that is my name, multi-viewer. It will show up as an NDI source to all the other devices that are in my cloud. Now, I might say that's all easy, but you know what? That first signal coming in, he probably is just a little bit weird on his color. Now I drop in a prog amp, put him in the middle, and now I've got brightness, contrast, saturation, and multicolors to be able to balance that out of that video signal. Or maybe, for instance, it comes in and it's just a little bit more on the flaky side, for instance. So maybe he has a little bit more latency than we need. So at that point, I could come up here and grab, it's just easier just to search it. So now, frame. So now I could grab a frame sync on Sam down here, and I'd grab that frame sync, and now he is going to time and resync that video coming in that might be a little bit flaky. So these are all the little tools that I could use to create my production, right? So this is getting really granular, but it allows me to build things and be more, I guess you would say, flexible in my build. I have an audio delay that's coming in. So this guy's audio, I'm going to go and grab him, and I'm just doing this fast, guys, but I'm going to grab him. His audio's off. Oh, let me dial that in. Up, no, a little bit more. Yeah, okay. Now his audio is in sync with everybody else. I can do that on video too. So this is kind of the power between this. If I needed to have a certain output that is a certain brand, for instance, I could bring it into my CG engine that's part of this, and Singular's output can actually plug directly into this, or an NDI source from like my CharacterWorks or now the Expression Box, any of these other systems that are putting out NDI key and fill, I could bring that also in and combine that into this output. And so then I could do branding for multiple outputs. So this is where, as we were going through more things, yes, you see there's intercom there. Multi-viewers, if I needed a bigger multi-viewer, there's an 18 input. And then I could take this 18 input and bring it into a 2x2. So I could actually just keep adding and making layers larger and larger and larger. One of the great tools I use all the time is this NDI analyzer. So as you see, it's not just a one point to one point. Now, whenever I bring this video in, if I had this on and it had source coming into it, then it would tell me exactly what it is. So if I brought in a signal generator, for instance, here, and I'm going to take this one out and bring it in, turn it on. And now in just a second, this should be popping in. Oh, wrong size. Let me turn it off real quick and put it at a 1080. It was at my 4K settings. And throw it up into 5994. So now if I took this output and patched it directly in my analyzer, and I turned it on, it would show me exactly what resolution and everything that's coming out of that box. For some reason, this one's not. That's weird. But this is just a great way, another piece of the pie that helps me put things together in the cloud. Whenever it comes around to outputs for simple shows, you asked me what other tools, Leland. This is one of them because I have a vision mixer built into this. So I would take all these outputs that I have going out, bring them into the vision mixer.
So then you do all your overlay work from that output, wherever
And then
those clean outputs go.
This is a simple 6-channel vision mixer. Did you see that pop up also? Okay, so this is just a simple, and I could actually talk to this. Joe, we got to talk. Remind me about that. I could talk to this from a MIDI controller. So I can actually address these and pull them up, and this will allow me to control audio also on the sliders from each one of those NDI sources. So I could use this as kind of a master control of sorts to put 3 or 4 different vmixes together into it, or if I want to send it out. So this is just part of the pieces that we're using. I'll briefly show you a few of the others. That this is my friend. I'm gonna give you a little glimpse. So this is just one section of how we had things coming in multiple places. So he had failover switches in here. If one SRT failed, it'd fall over to another SRT, and then if that one failed, it would pop up a picture, and then if that failed, it would pop up. If that failed, it'd pop up a video, and then in that one failed, it would pop up a picture. So of those layers of backup was all built into this. That was one of 12 different signal paths of the pilots or players that were in part of this broadcast. It was phenomenal to see that redundancy built in like that. And every single one of these things were checking themselves and saying, okay, is it live? Is it not live? Is it on? Is it off? And it just helps take a lot of that stress out of everything else. Now, this is where we're talking about the live view stuff. I was doing a test earlier. We got it working in the cloud. I'm the first person that got it working with them. It is their cloud server, which before was only a single channel. And so we've been working with them to develop the 4-channel for this LU800. Now I've got those 4 video signals able to go up. And with this module here, I could very simpler just watch all 4 channels coming out. And now this is an NDI output if it was live coming into it right now, and I would see all 4 of those in a quad split. And so I can see all 4. Now those are NDI sources there, right? So each one of these on the left side over here are NDI sources. So I could either go into a vision mixer, or I could go back into the bigger part of this, my router. So this is my NDI router that lives on the cloud running off of the server there. The NDI router is just like a router you would have in your truck or in your production studio, where anything could go from any place to any place. So if I wanted my router 2 output to have my multi-viewer 2 on it, that's it. It's 2 clicks. It's done. Oh, I want router 16 output to have the other multi-viewer that I just put in, or if I just wanted to have a test signal, whatever it happens to be. So it allows me to very easily move. I'm not having to go to the NDI way of doing it, like NDI Studio, where you're right-clicking and having to choose a machine name and then choose an input. All my machines and all my outputs are pointing at this NDI router. And then once they're at this NDI router, I'm able to put them anywhere I want. Now, this is a 32x8. There are times when we might want to have a little less. This would be, say, for the executive that wants to just quality check things. He's just QCing. So his output is router 100. He has the ability to choose, and I could scale this up or down as many as I want. He could choose from any of the output channels to know exactly what's happening. This is a shareable URL, so I could share that out to them. All they do is click it, and this is the interface they see. They know nothing of what's happening in the background. But they do know if I click here, 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 or here, I can see this. Now they're using a different software to see it with. It may be a WebRTC software. It may be the Sienna Link software, which is part of the processing engine. And then there's the engineering geeky kind, like I don't want to call anybody out, but it does have a limit. It's huge. So this one right now is set up, I think, yeah, it's a 256 by 256. This is all the same software, all this running on one server, serving all these NDI sources in and out. This is where I have mine set just for the demo purposes and our larger events that we might have to build out. It does have an upper limit. It's 4,096 by 4,096. So that can live all in the cloud or on premise if you have that many sources going in on premise also. But I could go in, I could change my sources going in and assign those specific names instead of, blah names like this. It's like, you can give them names that make sense. However it needs to be, edit it all up, go back, and then once you're back into your user panels, everything in there is just in plain English, and it's going to open up the big guy because that's what I had last. And see, now they're changed over to what they were before. And then you just have to tell, as you set it up, this is engineering side of building larger facilities to make sure that people understand it takes a lot to get to this point. But once you get to this point, the usability is phenomenal. It's just really, really easy to use. All right. So that was part of NDI router. Let's go back to that's one layer. Then the other side of this, as we did this little Zoom thing, okay, this one's really messy, so you have to kind of follow along with me. So we had two sources coming in that were on the ground using a companion product of what they use, which is NDI Cloud. And so NDI Cloud is it's a computer version of this guy. It's a computer version of the Matrox or the LiveU 800 that's bringing multiple channels of video and audio from the ground up to the cloud as we were receiving here. It could be point to point. It could be from one venue to another venue. So once we have those sources up here, then we're bringing them into the Vision Mixer. And also I had another one coming from a Teradek. We were using a Teradek at this event as a backup for cellular versus the LiveU. We've moved to the LiveU now. And then once all these sources were in the Vision Mixer, this gave me a very simple, easy way to use to be able to bump between those inputs of what was going out live to air. And so the output of this system was also being fed into the meter bridge, which was one of my favorite things, because I actually I was fighting with the A1. Go figure, right? I was fighting with the A1. He was like, the audio's perfect. The audio's perfect. It's like, dude, encoder 2's got a lower audio. He goes, no. It's all the same signals. All the same signals. It's like, okay, look, I'm just telling you what I can see. I got scopes on this. I can see them on the scopes. I also turned it on to this meter bridge. And so I fed this back down. Let me see if it'll show up in this output program. No, that's going to be program. So and meter bridge output. This is, Andrew, you'd love this too. Oh, he is not happy. So it's like it's a visual representation, almost like a DAW. So it draws a waveform as time goes on, which is really cool because then you can just see right there. I told you that clip was low. You played back that content. I knew it was low. I could hear it was low. It goes, no, it's all the same. It's like, okay, look, here it is in black and white. Then let me see if I can get our multi-viewer out of this guy. So this one has a multi-viewer out. So what I did is I folded back. I made it mad. Oh, I turned it off. No wonder. There we go. So this little pop-up is just like it's just a basic representation of everything. And so it's showing it here. I could actually click on this and see any of the other inputs, the NDI inputs, and it's just a little preview. But on the ground, we actually were feeding them back off of this Sienna Link, which is a specific software that they load on their computer. And then that software is just a monitoring software. And so it's coming from the cloud directly to this. It's similar to WebRTC, but it's not the quality of WebRTC. It's almost like a full-on resolution, and it can create on the player, creates an NDI source on the ground too. So we showed them this at this event, and once they got it, then I found out it's like, hey, it's stuttering a little bit. It's like, well, how many times did you hit that NDI source? He goes, oh, we opened it up on like 20 machines. Well, go ahead. Yeah, that's the problem. It wasn't ready for that. You weren't supposed to do that. But it's so easy to overtax your network. And that's kind of what I'm getting to is whenever you don't have a properly balanced network with the right hardware on the switch side to be able to handle that amount of traffic, you can very quickly put yourself in a bad place. So that is basically it on the NDI processing engine. Let me flip over one more time of everybody is asking me of the Cloud Vector Plus. So here we go.
Guys, I'd love to stick around, but I'm going to catch the rest of this on record. Jeff, thanks so much for everything you always put out there for us to learn this stuff. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to butt in and say it is 9 o'clock, and this is normally where we do end. So
we'll be quick.
Yeah, we'll finish this segment up, and we'll try to get a couple those last minute questions.
Sounds good. So this system is what we're using in the cloud more so with multiple DDRs. We've got 4 different DDRs. We also have the ability to do a simplified or a more elaborate, as you saw. Each one of these multi-viewers here can also be adjusted. This is the software-only version of what a TriCaster TC2 Elite would be. But this all lives with the multiple MEs. I've got 8 different MEs. I have 8 different outputs. So the actual mix outs, so I can create 8 different types of output, 8 different versions of output if I needed to. And then I could also record in the cloud up to 8 different places. So 8 different streams could be rolling as far as record time, but actually it will do more than that. I could actually output 2 different streams. This is, for me, my workflow. And then the big part of it for those guys that are out there in the audio world, now I've got real audio control sliders and such that allow me to de-embed up to 8 channels of NDI audio in this version and process that with equalizers, gates, and audio triggers, and of course, and then compressors and limiters. And then the routing side is just tremendously powerful to be able to do 4 different auxes, 4 different outputs. And then as we were saying earlier, it comes with that NDI. Basically, it's like a VST. Now it is a VST plugin. There's a different version also that is part with their door that allows me to embed audio, de-embed audio, and also do up to 128 mix minuses within the Ardour or Harrison software, which is insane for mostly anything that's even on the ground for that matter. But it allows me to operate and do all that in the cloud also. So that was a brief part. We could do hours on more of that too. So let's fire away some of those questions so we can get you wrapped up.
Excellent. So, this has been, as Joe DeMax said in the comments, his head's going to explode. I feel exactly the same way. So thank you, Jeff, for that. Someone asked, is Jeff considering hosting a class on setting up vMix in the cloud? Any ideas on what that would cost? Well, you just had one for free here. I mean, we didn't
even get close to setting it up. Yeah, but it's one of those things that I do have several clients that we do consulting with, and so we could do it multiple ways. I can just set it up for you, and you could run with it. Or if you wanted to be taught the ins and outs, we could do it that way also. We've got a couple different pricing is by the time and stuff too. As far as a class to do it, it's tough to qualify whether or not that would be worth the time in the same amount of time. So I'd have to think about that. I have thought about it a lot about doing a class. I just have not done that yet.
Jeff, if you don't mind, in the chat, just drop me the link that I can repost for your consulting services.
Sure.
Thank you. While you do that, Rocco DeSanti asked, you use Larix Broadcaster with SRT for any workflows?
Yes. Larix and also Maps. I can never remember how to pronounce it, but yeah, he's got great stuff. There's not a whole lot of options out there short of, since High Vision basically built the most they didn't build SRT, but they were behind a lot of it, and the majority of people that are using SRT are using it with High Vision. I think Joe mentioned something about that he was using the High Visions. They're fantastic too, but they're expensive. So the Larix stuff is got a great thing for it, and incoming for the ground maps. There you are. He's got a lot of good stuff, and the price is right for a lot of the tools too.
Cool. So the last question I have from Mike Graham: if the gigabit switch has a gigabit of backplane throughput for each port on it, can't you do like 6 NDI sources per port? So if an 8-port switch, if it's an 8-port switch and each provides a gigabit of throughput, can't you run like 6 full NDI sources through each port? That would be what, 48?
In more modern switches, depending on the level of the switch. If you're talking about a Netgear, I think I must have thrown them all away. And I think we did that the last time I was.
Yeah, I think last time you were here, we threw out all your Netgear switches.
I think I've got rid of all of them now, because that was like the last time I was holding on to them. But those little $40, $50 switches, I don't care if they say gigabit across them. The backplane does not support full enough to be able to handle it. So it depends on the switch. But then I have, gosh, I wasn't ready to talk switches, but I do have them over here. But it's basically a MikroTik, which is a 10 gig switch. And it's 5 ports, but the backplane on it's huge. And so, yes, that could actually do it. It's not all about what the port will handle. It's about what the backplane says it will handle. And then even then, sometimes things don't work the way the paper says. They go figure, right? But sometimes they don't work the same. So test, and more test.
Great. Well, it looks like something just came in on our Zoom side. It says, how you used Digigram. What? Maybe you have to read that one. Is that? I'm not familiar with it.
Let me see.
Sorry.
I think they're asking how you use Digigram, Ikoya Talk, or Ikoya Guest with Xlink.
Oh, have I ever used it? Actually, no. Actually, I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, it's an audio thing, Ed.
I'm not familiar with it either. So
it's supposed to be like a IP, like a better audio version than what Zoom provides audio wise. I don't know the ins and outs of it. Maybe Jeff knows better than me, but it's. I looked at it. I saw it one time and I was like, whatever.
I haven't. I actually haven't worked with it at all. Yeah.
What about Jay Clark at the bottom? You ever heard of them?
Nah.
Yeah.
Nope.
I mean, Digigram has been around forever, but as sound, more or less as a capture device, right? Isn't it for audio I&O?
So Acquia was, I think, and maybe the person who asked this might have a better question than would jump to Iris. It was like an IP-based version of audio that just provides cleaner, more clear audio versus the competitor, which is Zoom at this time.
Right.
But again, it was an audio thing, so I looked at it for 2 seconds and moved on with my life.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares about audio, right? Make pretty pictures.
Looks like Iris, you have something?
Yeah, so with field production, you can end up in all sorts of interesting places. You ever end up in a dead zone, and how do you fix it?
You move.
Like a whole dead area.
Believe it or not, I have been there. and it is what is that place? It's on the coast of California. Oh, Aptos, California, south of San Francisco. There is probably about a square mile area there that cellular service just does not work. Period. So stand outside, stand on top of a building, doesn't matter. Hold your phone in the perfect angle, doesn't matter. It just doesn't work. It's a horrible place to work. Beautiful
place to live
on the beach, but man, the cellular just sucks. And so
that's not the only spot.
Well, yeah, it's true. It's not the only spot that way, John. There is a place in New York, a city park in Binghamton, New York, that was almost identically the same way. Except Verizon would work, AT&T and Sprint would not. So very frustrating whenever you have crew that mostly was on those services.
We have some places here like that.
Yeah. So in those situations, whenever we go out and do remote production or we do any production, most of the time, Iris, we book our own lines. So we don't provide it to people there, but we need it ourselves, and so we'll book 2 lines ourselves, a primary and a backup, and that has become just a given. Even if they have service, I'll in our pre-production, we'll ask them, it's like, who do you have? Okay, we have Comcast, we have Spectrum, we have whoever. I go to them, I book the lines. Those lines are under my name. I can handle the billing and everything on it. Sometimes some companies, Spectrum, for instance, will do a temporary setup for a month, and so you only pay for that 1 month. Comcast, in their infinite wisdom, they cannot figure out how to bill for 1 month. So you have to sign a contract with them. And then you have to disable and discontinue it within 30 days so that said contract is null and void. It's the stupidest thing. And most of the places we go, Comcast. So that's a juggle we do all the time. Then from that point, we're putting out our own access points. We're putting out our own network. Everything is all done and it's all controlled from us.
Great. So I'll just open it up if anyone on the panel has any last questions or comments for Jef, other than to thank him for doing such a great job again.
I feel like I just kind of wandered around there, guys. I'm sorry.
I just want to say, as an EIC, like John, look at that with the clack, clack, clack. As a former EIC, at this point, right? You just with the 2 products you just showed this last 25 minutes here, you literally just turned the invisible to visible, and that to me is mind blowing because that's been my number one thing. Like, I have to in my mind remember all these paths I'm doing, and now you have a way to physically see it as well as putting in a router, which is something I'm used to seeing all the time. So now I'm like, I'm gonna be comfortable using this product. I gotta get it.
Yes, very much so. No, I agree. And it helps me think it through. And so a lot of times I might have things that I'll just start from scratch and then I'll just draw the lines. And it's just like drawing signal flow diagrams. It makes sense to me after you do it.
Yeah, no, I've been doing paper and pen this last, 5 months now. Like every time I do something, okay, draw it out. Okay, that's still there. And I gotta, just so I can go back, because there's no way to see it anymore. Now it's all done my network. So it's like, okay, unless I remember this or write it down, if anything goes wrong, I don't know where to go anymore. So that was huge in my blend. And the fact that you can see it and route it through and name it and really fine tune it, that's awesome. So thank you for that, as much as everything else you're doing here for us. I mean, this is mind blowing. The community's been loving it. My phone's been blowing up. I'm sure everybody else here's been blowing up. There's been lots of side chats going on here, lots of Facebook chats. We had about 44 in average on Facebook, 66 comments right now. I know a lot of us have been talking within each other, passing information around what you've been saying. So this has been, like you're saying, one of those mind-blowing kind of talks tonight. Really appreciate it.
I'm going to leave you with one little nugget of mind-blowing. Okay, so I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. This client of mine, Drone Racing League, just recently started broadcasting on a little company you may have heard of them called NBC. And they are doing all their production in the cloud. So anybody out there that's like, oh, this will never happen. There's somebody on the West Coast that's like, I'm always going to use hardware, blah, blah, blah. It's happening, guys. It is 100% happening, without a doubt. They are doing. We built them out. They have 2 of the Sienna engines, NDI router. They have all that's tying it all together. 5 or 6 different vmixes and different layers and different basically as virtual MEs. They're already looking at the Vector Plus because they know that they need that capability. It is happening, and it is live on NBC SN, where I think it's kind of like the B class of sports goes a little bit. But then last night, Sunday night on NBC proper. That is huge. That is huge to know that most people don't even know. Like, yeah, it's just something on there. It's drone racing. It's cool and all. But if you knew, now you know. When you watch it, it's amazing that that's all being done in the cloud. The director is in UK. The producer, the engineer here is in Colorado. They have multiple players / pilots that are in the US and also Canada and also the UK, I think Sweden. They're all over they're starting to spread out where they're all over the world. It's all being done all in the cloud. Just amazing.
That's that it is amazing. It's going to be the future of production. And it sounds like you're just way ahead of the curve, and I need to set up some of those sessions to catch up.
Come on.
So, oh yeah, you know what? I'll fly out. I'll pay my own ticket to fly out to wherever you're remote clouding from.
No fly. Have you been listening?
I want to
fly anywhere.
I want to sit in the room with you. I want to be looking over your shoulder. I want to see you touch the keyboard. So
I'll put a camera up. I'll put a camera up for you.
Okay, that's what we'll do. So Guy Cochran on the Facebook side says, awesome. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, Jef Kethley. So yes, thank you, Jef. But I also, at this time, just want to thank the DVE store for their continued support. Guy Cochran and his team are amazing over there. You can get all your video needs. They'll steer you right. They'll point you in the right direction if you need something. That's over at dvestore.com. So check them out. They are a big supporter of the AV Tech Talks, and we always thank them. So with that, if there's nothing else from our panel, let's call the show. It's 9:16, so we ran over a little bit. Not as over as I think we did on the last talk, but we did run a little over. So great talking though. Everybody I think got something out of this chat. I know I did. I think some of the minds here were blown just watching everybody's faces in the gallery view and seeing all these comments on Facebook. So with that, Bodie, did you have something before we sign off?
Yes, I do, and I'm going to be nagging the hell out of you for it. And I don't care if you like me for it or not. I'm $140 away from my goal for the kids on Extra Life on my Twitch. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm going to post a link in the Facebook. What that is your donations go to the local hospital to pay bills of sick kids that can't afford their treatments and things like that. So that's what my whole stream has been pushed and promoted to. So I'm $140 as of right now, meeting my next goal that I have laid out for myself, which is $250. I'm starting small, not expecting anybody to donate millions and thousands, but I'm starting small and working my way up. So if you guys would be great, helping that $5 helps. Whatever you can helps. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, please. So help Bodie reach that goal. Is there a time frame for that?
And there isn't a time frame. The $250 goal is for the end of tonight. So I have tonight to reach $140 more. It will go on throughout the end of the year. It will go on continuously throughout the year. Just that $250 goal is for tonight.
Gotcha. Great. Before we head out, Omar, Wednesday night, AV Educate Podcast Edition. Who's coming up this week?
So this Wednesday, I got a good friend of mine, Trevor Zulinki from Digital Productions. He's going to be talking about the cost of business. So if you're a freelancer out there in the market right now and you guys are kind of trying to learn how to market yourselves correctly, how to price yourselves out, this will be a very good talk for you. He's going to kind of give you the ins and outs of what you need to build for as far as yourself, your gear, and things like that, based on your access to gear and your access to internet and things of the nature. Pretty much he's going to educate us on what it really does cost to be a business, and if you're running yourself as a business, how you should be charging for those things, and to figure out what's best for your business and your pricing. with your community and your clients.
Cool. That sounds awesome. I don't think I'm working this Wednesday, so I will make sure I'm there in the comments as usual. Now, Omar, I think because you are the brainchild of next week's talk, can you let our audience know what they're in for next week with Bodie and Rocco DeSanti, also known as the other Lone Star, on Twitch?
So we're going to do a little bit of a game challenge for the community. One of the things that I really enjoy the most about the AV Tech Talks, and I'll be quick as I can, I really love learning about signal flows and how we operate and how we do things. Now, OBS is a powerful platform. It does a lot of different things. It's often used between the pro level and the consumer level, so that it has a broad spectrum of uses. What we're going to do is do a little challenge. We're going to do 4 challenges. We have 3 judges. One of them will be a surprise for these guys. 2 of them have already been picked out and assigned. One of them is here tonight with us. So look at this panel you have here. One of them will be our judges on that. Another one who is not here will be there as well. And a third one we will announce the day of. There will be obviously 1 winner and 2 competitors. It will be Christopher Brown and Rocco DeSantis. They're the Lone Star and Talks About will be competing against each other on 4 tasks. We will not only show these 4 tasks, the completions of it, but we're also going to show you the workflows that both of these awesome OBS operators are using to get to these tasks of completion. So you'll learn not only to see what the end result is, but also how they got there and how they do it from 2 very different perspectives. One who's an educator and a teacher and a user of it in more of a live event scenario, and one who's a user in a gamer sense of it and uses it to Twitch out and to stream and to do other platforms as well, with Zoom and what we do and everything else we do. So I wanted to Chris, I think it was fun for the community to kind of engage with you. If you have family or friends before the holidays who want to kind of learn about it, or after the holidays who want to learn about it or get into it, this would be a great show for them to kind of see the signal flow and the setups and how things are run with the OBS. That's the rundown.
Doing something a little bit different after Turkey Day here in the U.S. Hopefully it'll wake us all up from the food comas we're going to be in over this long weekend. And with that, we do have some great shows coming up in December. I know we're doing something on PTZ cameras. We lined up a couple other things, and then, remind me what was at the end of December, Omar? It was...
So PTZ cameras with Kelly Foxon and the Foxon family. And then as I look at my phone for the calendar, or a Trello account that has a lot of information on it, the last one on the 28th will be Watch Out, and so right. Watch Out to run an LED screen in particular will be the example we're going to use for that one.
Gotcha. And then we have stuff lined up for the middle 2 weeks. We're just nailing them down, but everything through the end of the year is scheduled, and it's a lot of really cool shows coming up. And then, we're going to have to get Jef back, I think, in the new year, because he just packs so much into these talks that the 2-hour window is just not enough. So
anytime, guys.
We'll get you back, Jef. So with that, thank you, Facebook, for tuning in. Thank you for Zoom webinar. If you want to get closer to the action, I'll drop the registration link for the Zoom webinar into the Facebook chat so that you guys can sign up. You can join us as attendees, or you can let us know you want to be on the panel. We're open to that. So shoot us a message, and good night, Facebook. Enjoy your holidays, everybody.
Thanks, Jef.
Thanks, Jef.